Hi, this is Nicola Matrano. Colleen Bracco, Jillian Caffrey, and I have created this advocacy project for a school community. We would present this so that everybody within that school building is well aware of the steps taken in order to determine if a child is an L. And once that child has been determined as an L, how we could support him or her throughout their entire time in that school, and how we would advocate for their rights as well as the rights of their family members. We would like to start our presentation with just a short clip from I Love Lucy. In this clip, Ricky Ricardo has some frustration because in a lot of the words that he's encountering throughout the story he's reading contain OUGH. But as he will show us, OUGH does not sound the same in every word. This is just a little sample of the trickiness that is the English language. Determining whether or not a student is an English language learner begins at the registration process. Among all the papers that a parent or guardian is expected to complete, one of the most important ones is the home language survey. This survey indicates whether or not English is the primary and sole language being used in the household, or if there is a language other than English being spoken within that home. If on the home language survey it indicates that there are no other languages than English being spoken in the home, then the child will be enrolled as a native English speaker. No further steps are taken to determine NYSETL eligibility. However, if there is another language being spoken in the home, the ENL teacher will interview the child in English. There will be an interpreter of the home language present if need be. But if it turns out that the child is in fact able to articulate in English answers to the questions that the ENL teacher is asking, then the ENL teacher may find that this child is not an English language learner. Conversely, if the child is unable to articulate his answers in English, the child would then be administered the NYSETL. The NYSETL will determine if the child is an English language learner or not. The NYSETL is the exam that's given to potential English language learners. There are 5 categories of scoring on the NYSETL: entering, emerging, transitioning, and expanding all deem that the child is an English language learner. However, if the child scores commanding on the NYSETL, then that indicates that he or she is proficient enough in English and is not considered an English language learner. The number of minutes per week that a child receives for English language support is based upon the results of the NYSETL. For example, if a student scored within the entering or the emerging categories, the student will receive 180 integrated minutes per week. Additionally, the student will receive 180 standalone minutes per week. What integrated means is that the ENL teacher will be working with that child in the classroom alongside the classroom teacher, whereas standalone minutes is when the child is removed from his classroom, taken to a smaller setting in a different location, and works with a small group and the ENL teacher on English language acquisition. If the child scores transitioning or expanding on the NYSETL, that student receives only 180 integrated minutes per week. On the NYSETL, if a student scores in the commanding level, he is not an English language learner and thus will not receive any ENL support. We added this slide in because we think it's important that not just for the parents to be educated on the programs that are offered English language learners, but because the whole school community should have a sense of the programs that are offered within their school building, or the programs that are in existence in the city, where they may not be offered within that school, but they may be in a neighboring school, and the program may be a better fit for the child. And so school members should know of these types of programs. That way, if ever a parent approaches them, they're well versed in EDL services that are being offered within the city schools. The three current programs that are offered to English language learners are English as a New Language, Transitional Bilingual Education, and Dual Language. English as a New Language was formerly called ESL, English as a Second Language. It has now been renamed ENL, English as a New Language, because many children are coming into our city schools and English is not in fact their second language. It could be their third or fourth language. Within the ENL program, instruction is provided in English. There is home language support that could be in the sense from other peers, paraprofessionals. The teacher may know some of the home language, but it emphasizes English language acquisition. As mentioned earlier, two components of this program are the standalone program. Those are for our entering and emerging students. They're pulled out of their classroom, they're put into a smaller group for 45 minutes, 50 minutes, and they work on English language acquisition. The other component is the integrated or the push-in model, where the ENL teacher is working with their English language learners within the classroom setting, and they're working on content area instruction. In the Transitional Bilingual Education program, students develop conceptual skills in their home language as they're learning English. As students develop stronger English language skills, instruction time in the home language decreases. The idea is that in the beginning of a school year, the home language will be used 75% of the time. English will only be used 25% of the time. But as the school year grows on, that will become eventually a 60-40 mix, then a 50-50 mix. The goal is, though, that by the end of the school year, English is being used dominantly about 75% of the time, and the home language has been reduced to about 25% of instruction time. In the dual language program, students receive half of their instruction in English and half of their instruction in the target language. This is generally a 50-50 split, and it stays like this throughout the whole entire school year. They want to maintain the target language while augmenting the English proficiency. Some ways in which the content is delivered could be determined by the classroom teacher or could be set by the school. An example of how the program may look could be that on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, the mathematics lessons are taught in Spanish, and on Tuesdays and Thursdays, mathematics is taught in English. Another alternative could be that on Monday, all instruction is in Spanish. On Tuesday, all instruction is in English. It also could be like a period by period or subject area by subject area basis. Math will be in Spanish and reading will be in English, and then the next day they would just flip-flop the languages for those content areas. The idea is that it is 50% instruction in two different languages all of the time. So we talked earlier about the NICE-ETL, and the NICE-ETL is the assessment that helps determine if a student is in fact an English language learner. Well, once it has been determined that a child is an English language learner, he or she receives their services for the whole school year, whether it's integrated or pull out or both, And then come springtime, they take another assessment, which is called the nicest lad. And what the student obtains on this exam will determine the number of service minutes they will receive the following school year. Enter and emerging students will still get the 180 integrated, 180 standalone. Transitioning will get the 100 integrated. However, the commanding students are no longer considered English language learners, but they are mandated to receive 90 minutes of integrated service per week. Commanding students must receive those 90 minutes for the two additional school years. So if they pass the nicest lad in spring of 2017, they will get services for the 17-18 school year and the 18-19 school year. Again, not considered English language learners. They're what we call the former L's, but they must continue to receive support. This table indicates the number of minutes that each English language learner would receive per week. The entering and emerging levels, those students get 360 minutes per week. 180 of those minutes are in standalone, whereas they're working in a small group with the EDL teacher on English language acquisition. 180 of those 360 are spent in integrated within their classroom, meaning that the students remain in their classroom, they continue on with their content areas, and the EDL teacher is in the classroom offering scaffolding as needed and just conversing with the child, offering support necessary for the child to be able to be proficient in whatever tasks are taking place. The transitioning and expanding, they only get the integrated minutes. For the commanding students, they're no longer technically English language learners. However, they must receive 90 minutes of integrated minutes per week for 2 additional school years after they have passed the nicest lad.
How can teachers advocate for their L's? This chart shows the different ways that teachers as individuals or as an institution can support L education. Individually, we can lead groups or advocacy networks to support English language learners in our schools. The main part of advocating for our L's is simply being the teacher in the classroom, aligning instruction that includes culturally diverse curriculum. On the state and federal level, teachers can follow what is going on, such as any new laws or supports that are coming out that benefit English learners. We can also become politically active and advocate for students and parents alike by making sure that policyholders are held accountable for their actions or for what they promise to do for these diverse students. One of the most important ways that we can advocate for L's, and one that I'm sure is overlooked or underestimated, is ensuring that families of these learners are kept informed as to what goes on within the school and with their child's education. We should be keeping in close contact with parents and families by sending letters home to them regularly, informing them of their students' progress. If we need to get translators to speak to them, we should definitely do that, which I know is going on in some schools. We should also send the letters home in their home language. A big part of family involvement is just simply the parent-teacher conferences. We should make sure that the students are letting their parents know that they need to come to school and speak to the teachers. Or the teachers should be emailing or phone calling or sending letters home to these parents and making sure that they are receiving these notifications. Additionally, instead of just meeting with these parents during parent-teacher conference or when the students initially come into the school, we should hold occasional or periodic meetings, team meetings for parents and teachers of these English language learners throughout the year so that everyone is on the same page and the students really get the most out of the ESL program while they're in it. A third way to advocate for ELs is to educate ourselves and educate others. Attend community, local, and city events where you can obtain information about the ways that ELs may be positively or negatively impacted by social issues or climate change due to their changing communities, cities, and country. Take every opportunity to educate others. Let others know of the issues that may exist or arise for some L families. As students of the TESOL program, we are well aware of the different Supreme Court cases that advocate for the educational rights of English learners. Some of these cases include Lau versus Nichols, which argued for the rights for Ls to receive educational instruction in a language that they understand, or Plyer versus Doe, which secured the right of undocumented students to a solid education. We should make our colleagues and the school community members aware of these long-fought rights. Let's take a look at some common trends indicating areas of improvement within each modality for which many Ls need support and scaffolding. As teachers, we should continuously use hard and soft data when planning instruction. This information will assist teachers in creating lessons that allow for multiple entry points, scaffolded questioning, and small group instruction. The first modality is speaking. Skill in need of support may be students who are having difficulty expanding on their responses and giving details. Some scaffolds to support these students may be to give a student a prompt, such as asking, "Can you explain why?" or "Can you tell me why this happened?" Another scaffold may be to use a sentence starter or a sentence frame. And a third may be to provide opportunities for students to stand up and speak to children as well as to other adults. The second modality is that of listening, and a skill in need of support may be students who are having difficulty following directions or commands in the classroom. Some scaffolds include having the student retell directions to a partner to ensure that he has understood what is being asked of him. This is important in the case of anything that's going on in the classroom. Students should understand what they're supposed to be doing, and this could be as simple as just opening your notebook and copying homework down. If they don't understand, then they're not going to be doing what they're supposed to be doing. And teachers can also use the total physical response to expose Ls to new vocabulary and verbs, nouns that are associated with commands. We should also provide more dictation of stories and allow students to take notes on what they are hearing. The third modality is that of reading, and a skill in need of support may be students who are having difficulty with vocabulary acquisition and usage. Scaffolding for reading includes providing several opportunities for exposure to new vocabulary. We can pre-teach vocabulary before a read aloud or before handing out a reading assignment for students to engage in. We can also have them speak and write about reading. We can have them or we can lead in role play to further explain what is going on in a story or in a reading. We can use videos or visuals such as pictures so that learners who aren't quite understanding the words on the paper or what we're saying can see it in a visual way. We quoted Wallace here in reference to vocabulary acquisition and fluency when he says, although some students possess a fluent oral vocabulary, many L students struggle with achieving the reading level necessary to function at the appropriate grade level. According to Wallace's quote, students may know or be able to read or say the vocabulary words that they're reading, but the question is, do they understand or comprehend what the words mean within the text? So a skill in need of support is reading comprehension, definitely in need of scaffolding. A scaffold may be to work on building fluency, such as through oral speaking or by reading a text through one time. Teachers can explicitly teach and model how to use reading comprehension strategies. Some other strategies include annotating a text, such as taking notes in the margins. We can also do rereading to find main details and other elements, literary elements such as theme or characters or setting. These are all different ways to scaffold reading comprehension. These two charts give some ideas as to building fluency. On the left-hand side, we have some strategies such as how to read without sounding so robotic. We can tell students to use a storyteller's voice, such as when they're reading a book out loud, or we can tell them to put words together like they're talking, just very naturally. We can also tell them to be aware of punctuation, and when they see it, they should match their voice to it, such as in an exclamatory statement or as in a question. They can also change their voice to sound like the characters they're reading for. On the right-hand side, we have a fluent reader checklist that includes accuracy, expression, punctuation, pace, and comprehension. All 5 of these checklist items will support students in their fluency. This chart shows a good amount of comprehension strategies that students can use in their reading. So predicting, stopping, reading, and thinking about what might come next. This is a good think aloud strategy that students can use individually or in partners, maybe a think, pair, share. They can also stop and ask the W questions. I wonder, ask questions to help them think deeper about the story. Students can make connections using their schema to better understand the story. Maybe they can make a connection to their own life. They can think about the characters' feelings. They can summarize or wrap up their thinking to remember what the important parts are or what the details are. Ls at all levels of English proficiency and literacy development will benefit from comprehension skills, which allow them to read more accurately, follow a text or story more closely, identify important events and concepts in a text, master new concepts in their content area classes, complete assignments and assessments, and feel motivated to read in school and for pleasure. Finally, say, mean, matter is another strategy that helps students question the text, search for deeper meanings, and make connections between the text and their own lives. So students should say or ask what the text says and what happened. They may even cite the text, take quotations from it, or paraphrase. For mean, students should ask what the author means, what the author wants us to know, or what is he telling us by writing this story. Students should ask how they can interpret the reading. They should also read between the lines for maybe a theme or a lesson that they can learn from the story. As for matter, students should ask why it matters to me or to others. Why is the story or the lesson important? What significance does it hold? And what are the implications?
Skills of improvement that we found for our PowerPoint are students who perform better on narrative passages than on informative passages. The strategy that children can use are to expose them to more informative passages through shared reading and guided reading. Another skill was trouble with reading directions. Writing didn't align with what the task was requiring. The scaffold that we chose was do activities that focus on hearing and comprehending directions of a task. And the last one that we found was most writing is in simple sentences. The strategy that we found was create shared writing experiences to model expanded and complex sentences and how to write an introduction, link thoughts, and provide a conclusion. Another skill of improvement that we found was writing lacks descriptive details. The scaffold that we found was create personal visual dictionaries for domain-specific vocabulary, as well as modeling sentences that lack adjectives. Have students work together to describe each noun to enhance the sentence. Another skill was can the student answer questions and prompts relating to narrative passages more so than informative passages. The scaffold that we chose was to expose students to more informative passages through shared reading and guided reading. Think grade-specific content areas such as social studies or science. Another skill that we found was there is not structure to students' written paragraphs. The scaffold was direct instruction on paragraph construction, as well as shared writing experiences. And the last one that we found was improper grammar usage, simple phrases. And the scaffold that we found was direct instruction. It could be in small group lessons on verb tenses, subject-verb agreement, 3 different sounds of ed, pronouns, and conjunctions. The best way to advocate is to use students' funds of knowledge. Teachers can ask themselves, how can I use my students' culture to drive instruction in my classroom? How can I build bridges between my students from different cultures? As well as how can I make my classroom a classroom where all students believe customs, traditions are valued, respected, and celebrated. We found this article that stated the quote, funds of knowledge refers to these historically accumulated and culturally developed bodies of knowledge and skills essential for household or individual functioning and well-being. Teachers can make use of these funds of knowledge as they will begin to better understand their students and the families of their students. This information will help us as teachers provide a responsive classroom for all students learning in the classroom. English language learners can also support each other. We found research that indicates that speakers are more advanced than monolingual speakers. Support, don't suppress your ELL's first language. Allow your students to confer in their own shared language. Encourage your students to create literature products that are bilingual. Embrace opportunities for English language learners to use their first language throughout the school day through the various reading, writing, speaking activities that they engage in within the day. A student's first language in the classroom is very important. We found 2 articles that support our reasoning. Our first article by Boyle, 2005, said language 1 reading and writing skills contribute to language 2 literacy development, as well as Wang Manny, 2008, said the knowledge developed in their first language is transferred to their second language context. We believe sentence starters are a great help for English language learners in the classroom. Such sentence starters can include I wonder, I expect to see, I observed. I was really surprised when. I see patterns in. My data shows that. My results show what if, this relates to, or this reminds me of. So these sentence starters can be used in the classroom to help ELLs start their writing. This article that we found tells us that sentence starters enable students to master and participate in the discourse of academic vocabulary, as well as providing a bridge between an engaged student and one who is passive and unable to share his or her knowledge within the class. It also can be helpful when English language learners know what the specific academic language means but do not have the knowledge of how to put these thoughts into sentences. The Say, Explain, Show is another pre-teaching strategy that would be beneficial for English language learners in the classroom. Teachers can write the word on the board or on the overhead visible to all students, as well as say it as your finger runs under the letters. You could have students repeat the words or do steps 2 and 3 2 more times. A student can also explain the meaning in a friendly language. They could draw a stick figure type picture of what is or something that relates to. They could draw a picture of something that is not explained and draw it with a big X through the visual. Say the word again and have students repeat. Identify cognates from their language if possible, or show the relationships, as well as design a student to copy the word and a version of your quick sketch to add the classroom word wall. Here we have some EDL terms, phrases that are described, such as ELL. ELL is an English language learner. It's a term we use to refer to students who are not fully proficient in uses of English. EDL, English as a New Language, is the service we offer to English language learners. Home Language Survey, this is the form parents complete while registering their child for a New York City school for the first time. If the home language is English only, the child does not require an interview. Thus, this will not be administered. The home language code is input into ATS as no English. If the home language is a language other than English or is spoken in conjunction with English, the child will have an interview with the EDL teacher. If the struggles to reply in English to the interviewer's questions, the child will be administered the test. Here we have the Engage New York website. It's a valuable resource for finding the test overview, the targets of the measurement, performance levels, descriptions, and sample passages and test questions that you can take a look at. Here we also have 4 different websites that are valuable to get a better idea. These are the following references that we used in our PowerPoint, and that is our presentation.